Live NFL trivia every Tuesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge and have a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. This shouldn't exactly come as a surprise to you, but Robert Irsay was a man. He might be the most eccentric owner that the NFL has ever had, and if he's not, he's definitely in the conversation. Irsay was known for his hot head and desire to interfere with football operations. And many, and I mean many times, he took that way too far. You think of owners interfering with the football side of things today, and I promise you, nothing comes close to what Irsay was doing back in the 1970s while he owned the Baltimore Colts. And what's absurd is that while many of these are well documented, there's another one of these that is not talked about that might be the craziest of them all. In the middle of the 1978 season, without the knowledge of the head coach, he just decided to fire all of the assistant coaches. He just decided that the whole staff, minus the head coach, needed to go. And then after he was informed that he couldn't do that, he backpedaled in absolutely hilarious and spectacular fashion. This is the story behind one of the craziest moments in Robert Irsay's tenure. Before I talk about what specifically went down, we need some context as to how we even got to this point. This is just the abbreviated version of this, as I can go into way more detail on some of these issues. So here's just a 2-minute summary leading up to the event. When Irsay took over as the owner of the Colts in 1972, he was inheriting a team in a really good spot. Baltimore was one of the most respected franchises in all of football. From 1958 to 71, the Colts made it to the NFL's title game 5 times, and won Super Bowl V over the Dallas Cowboys during the 1970 season. In 1971, the year before Irsay assumed ownership, the Colts made it to the postseason and the AFC Championship. Basically, the Colts were a good team. That quickly went south when Irsay took over. In 1972, Don McCafferty, the head coach that just won the Super Bowl 2 years prior, was let go midway through. The Colts then hired Howard Schnellenberger in 1973. He was fired 3 games into the 1974 season in just about the stupidest way possible. Irsay wanted Burt Jones to be the starting quarterback over Marty Domries, and Irsay was on the sideline talking to Schnellenberger about when this was going to happen. Apparently, Schnellenberger said something sarcastic to Irsay, and Irsay fired him. Why the owner was perusing the sidelines in the middle of the game and interfering with the coach, I don't know, but the Colts were highly dysfunctional. In 1975, the Colts hired Ted Marchibroda, and it seemed that Baltimore had its man. In its first season, the Colts won the AFC East and went 10-4, making the postseason. Marchibroda was named Coach of the Year for his efforts. Then he resigned after the 1976 preseason because Irsay wanted to fire some assistants after a loss to the Detroit Lions. Again, this was after a loss in an exhibition game and was directed at a coach that just made the playoffs and was named the Coach of the Year. The dispute was resolved and Marchibroda came back and performed well. In 1976 and 77, once again the Colts made the playoffs. And though they never won a playoff game in that stretch, Irsay was pleased enough with the performance that he offered Marchibroda a 5-year contract. There was finally going to be some long-term commitment. Maybe Irsay trusted his coach enough that he wasn't going to meddle and interfere anymore. If that's what you thought, oh boy were you wrong. In 1978, the Baltimore Colts entered the season having won 3 straight division titles. They were one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl and represent the AFC. Pittsburgh wasn't getting any younger. Bob Greasy, the man in charge of Miami, was 33, and back then that was around the time that quarterbacks started falling off the cliffs. And there was skepticism, and rightfully so, about whether or not Craig Morton's successful 1977 season was a fluke, considering how the rest of his career went, and considering how poorly he played in the Super Bowl. Baltimore had a shot to do some serious damage. That did not happen. When starting quarterback and former league MVP Burt Jones went down with a shoulder injury, the Colts could not recover. Whether they trotted out Bill Troop or Mike Kirkland out there at quarterback, it didn't matter. The Colts were atrocious. They lost their first 2 games against the Dallas Cowboys and Miami Dolphins by a combined score of 80-0. Through 7 weeks, the team had allowed a league-worst 198 points, and had a league-worst point differential of -93. But credit to Marchibroda and company because despite a 2-5 start, Baltimore won 3 of its next 4, and were now at 5-6 with 5 to play. The odds that they were going to make the playoffs were slim, but considering the fact that they were 2 back of a wild card during the first season where 5 teams in each conference made the postseason, if they could go on a run here, a playoff push was not entirely out of the realm of possibility. To do this, they had to defeat the Cleveland Browns. Both the Browns and Colts were sitting at 5-6, so the importance of this game cannot be overstated. For the loser of this game, their season was over. And in this one, the Colts laid an egg. It was not pretty. Cleveland won at 45-24, with Brian Sipe throwing for 309 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and 150.6 passer rating. A game like that is incredible in any era, including today. But for 1978, this was otherworldly. Calvin Hill, a veteran who never had more than 3 receiving touchdowns in any year before this, had 3 receiving touchdowns in this game on 3 receptions. The 45 points was tied for the most given up by the Colts in Irsay's tenure. They hadn't allowed more than that in a game since 1969, where they allowed 52 to the eventual NFL champion Minnesota Vikings. And after the game, Irsay was ticked off. He was ticked off with the defense in particular, saying during the game, "Where are those $150,000 linemen?" He had just seen his team's season, which had such high expectations, come to an end in humiliating fashion. So Irsay did what every rational owner does in these types of situations. He fired every single assistant coach on the team. Before I go any further, if you want a visual representation of what this looked like, here's a good old-fashioned SpongeBob clip to set the mood.
Alright, get lost, all of you. You're fired. Go on, scram. Get out of here, you moochers. That's right. Keep moving.
You know what? Yeah.
Except you. You stay.
According to multiple sources after the game, Irsay announced that he was going to fire every single assistant and clean house of everyone except for Marchibroda. The only problem? Yeah, Irsay never told Marchibroda about this. When Marchibroda was informed after the game by reporters as to what Irsay said, he was shocked and said that he had to talk with his assistants before making any comment. I'd imagine the news that your entire staff is being let go would definitely come as a surprise to anyone, especially when this literally came out of the blue. A few days later, though, after Marchibroda and Irsay talked, nothing happened. The assistants were not fired. The reason they weren't fired, according to Irsay? Well, turns out that comment was taken entirely out of context. Irsay was never really going to fire his assistants. No, in fact, when he said that comment about firing everyone, what he really meant was that he was hiring new coaches to join the staff. It was all a giant misunderstanding. As Irsay said, "We need help on the sidelines." That was apparent to me, and I'm no football expert. The last part of that sentence is definitely true. Now, we could take Irsay's word for this, or we can take the side of common sense and assume that Marchibroda just talked Irsay out of doing this, and that this wasn't a misunderstanding, but rather Irsay genuinely wanting to fire every assistant. What evidence is there to back this claim up? Well, earlier in the season, Irsay feuded with offensive line coach Whitey Duvall and threatened to fire him, though that didn't happen once Marchibroda talked him out of that. There's also the fact that after the season, Irsay said on Duvall, "If he shapes up, he'll stay. If not, he'll go. I'll get Whitey so mad, he'll be super." There's also the fact that there is a repeated, continuous, and well-documented history of Irsay feuding with coaches. Oh, and there's also the fact that when the 1979 season rolled around, the Colts did not add a single coach, and they were still below the league average in terms of the number of assistant coaches on the staff. Remember how Irsay said that the team needed to hire 1 to 4 more assistants to ease the workload? He hired none. Zilch. Nada. Zip. 0. So I don't know about you, but I find it incredibly hard to believe that Irsay's words were taken out of context. Every assistant kept their job through the 1978 season. The Marchibroda was fired after a disappointing 1979 campaign where the team went 5-11 for the second straight year. By this point, the Colts had dropped 17 of their last 22 dating back to the end of the 1977 season, and it was clear that this relationship was fractured. The Marchibroda would return as a head coach in 1992 when the team was in Indianapolis. And this isn't the first time I made a video about Robert Irsay, as during that 1979 season, he issued what has to be, without a doubt, the stupidest contract in NFL history. You can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. So if for some reason any of the other 31 NFL owners are somehow watching this video, a word of advice: don't fire all of your assistants in the middle of the season, especially without telling your head coach about it. That's generally not a good way to run a functional organization. Be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for a chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JRGator9 and subscribe to 60-second NFL History on YouTube. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping get the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.